We are now a ministry that welcomes over 3,000 families that we have registered that come from all over Ohio and parts of Indiana to get support physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And we offer diapers, baby clothes, kids' clothes, toys, furniture, even vehicles when we have them donated. In fact, we've given away 76 vehicles since we started.
They had a nephew that was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. Their nephew was referred to a therapeutic riding program, and they went and they watched a couple of his classes. They thought it was the coolest thing. So Keith came back and said, hey, we've got the land, we've got the space, we've got the resources, let's start a program.
There are 60 programs here in Ohio, and we have been here for 30 years in Miami County. We're a little bit unique in that every child who has an open case before the court gets a CASA volunteer. So if there is an open case for abuse or neglect, we have a volunteer who's advocating for their best interest. We get to know the child, we get to know their caregivers, anybody in their world, doctors, therapists, daycare providers, anybody that child interacts with regularly, so that we can make good recommendations on what's in the best interest of the child.
We are sober living for men and women. We have houses in Sydney, Dayton, and Cincinnati. I started working at Izzy's because I am a former addict myself, and for me, without Christ, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Well, good morning. My name is Mark, one of the pastors here at the Valley. In fact, my role at the Valley is to make sure that all our physical locations, our online locations, our Back 40 campground, if you're watching us, we're glad you're with us. It's probably not camping season, so you might not be there. But and our missional communities are all putting feet to the vision that God's given us. The vision, as you saw, part of it there on the screen is Ezekiel 47, leading into Luke 4. And in Luke 4, Jesus said that there will be, when my kingdom is evidenced, there will be physical healing, there will be spiritual victory, the poor will be helped, and the marginalized will be seen. And that is what love does. In fact, those are people who are leading those organizations who got into the river, that's Ezekiel 47, who took a step into the trickle, took a step into the ankle, into the knee, into the waist, and raging river, and they are seeing, as a result of their obedience, lives being transformed, truly physical healing happening, spiritual victory happening. The poor are definitely being helped, and the marginalized are being seen. And so we as the Valley, all of our network of locations at Christmas are supporting them. We're 100%, how much? I like participate. Okay, 100% of what you give is going out. Like not 99.99, okay, 100%. And so you see the QR code behind me. You can, I don't care if you get your phones out, you can have them out the whole time, I don't care. But you can scan that QR code right now. We'll leave that there for a second. Or you can go to our website, thevalley.church, that's thevalley.church, or to our app. And I'm praying, and I'm already seeing it, but I'm praying that we are so radically generous and so incredibly generous that we are able to bless them with tens of thousands of dollars each so that they can continue doing what they're doing, which is truly seeing lives transformed by the power of Jesus Christ as they meet different needs that are going on, all right? So everyone's scanned that right. Everyone's valley.church, valley.church. You can go to the giving, and that's where you can give. The other thing, of course, I was looking at my calendar yesterday, which, by the way, congrats to you Ohio State fans, okay? Congrats, okay? And I'm a Penn State fan, so congrats to me, okay? Right? So as I was driving back from Pennsylvania last night, Jill and I were able to go to the game, and I almost have de-thawed. It was like 8 degrees there, okay? It was awesome, okay? As I was driving back, I was just thinking, I was like, oh, there's something going on this Tuesday and Wednesday, right? I was looking at the calendar, like Wednesday, Christmas. I need to step up my game a little bit, okay? My wife's not watching, okay? But I got a few things I got to get. But Tuesday night's Christmas, or Tuesday is Christmas Eve, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4:30. 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4:30. So you need to get your tickets. Here's why. You might like, well, are they assigned seats? No, we don't have like seat numbers on our chairs like we did at APAC last year, but you need to get your seats because we have been praying, and I know that many of you have been praying that we reach thousands and thousands of people in our community who don't know Jesus. And so actually I got a text about 45 minutes ago from one of our pastors at our Troy location. They said all 3 services are sold out. So I texted them back and said, start a 4th one. No, I did actually text that back, but they're just to give them some panic. I can't do that to them 2 days out, okay? But I'm just telling you, if you think you're going to just show up and maybe have a seat without getting the ticket reserved, we will try to find out some place for you, but we'd rather you not sit on the ground. I'm just telling you, you need to get, am I making sense? Okay, get your tickets. Even if you're like, well, are they going to take my tickets? No, you're going to actually drop them in a basket. Or are they going to look at them on my phone? Yeah, okay. Am I going to get turned away if I don't have one? Well, probably not. But just pretend I didn't say that. Okay, you need to get your tickets, okay? Because posters are everywhere, billboards, invites, and you're going to make who's your one, right? Who's that one that you're inviting? You all with me? I can only see like halfway back, okay? So the rest of you, right? You all with me? Thank you. We're in this series called about the names of Jesus. Who is Jesus? And the different names of Jesus. Of course, we could do like 3 months of it, so we only have 4 weeks, so we're kind of boiling it down. And we'll culminate on Christmas Eve with that he is the light of the world. And so if you missed any of the previous weeks, I encourage you to go to the YouTube channel, go to the Pickaway YouTube channel and check them out because they all work together. But I like participation, so I have a question. I need to just show of hand to this question. Have you ever received bad advice? Raise your hand. Ever received bad advice? Hands can go down, okay? Have you ever given bad advice? Okay, you guys are humble. There's humility, right? I'm guessing all of us at some point in our life have received bad advice. Hopefully the person wasn't intentionally giving us that bad advice. Hopefully not, right? That'd be really bad. But they were probably well-meaning. They probably thought they knew what to tell you, but they didn't understand the whole circumstance or whole situation. And as you took their advice and started applying it, you realized this is not good advice. And then on the other side, hopefully, I know you're all awesome people, you wouldn't give bad advice intentionally, but you've given advice and you've watched people put it into action. And as they've done that, you're like, ooh, should have not told them to do that. Or maybe it wasn't even bad advice, but I should have explained a little bit better how they actually implement that advice because that was not what I had in my mind, how they're approaching it. And anytime we're seeking advice or giving advice, I would call that counsel, right? Or we're offering counsel to someone. And so what are attributes that we would look for in someone we were seeking counsel from? Maybe it's marriage counseling, maybe it's financial counseling, maybe it's just some life coaching, maybe it's for physical, to get better physically, get better shape. We would want someone with some, I think these are attributes, some wisdom. 3 of you would like wisdom, okay? I don't know who else you're going to, okay? Right? So we'd like some wisdom, probably some life experience, empathy, right? Someone who can kind of, get into your shoes a little bit, understand. Sympathy, maybe, too. Knowledge. Like if I'm going to someone on marriage advice or marriage counsel, if they're like, I know nothing about marriage, and I don't really want to learn anything about it, I'm probably going to end that appointment or conversation pretty well, right? Kindness. How about that one, right? If you're seeking someone on financial advice and they just yell at you and say how stupid you are with your investing, no, we want a little bit of kindness. We would like truth. Oh, that's another one, right? Someone who can speak some truth in, right? Those kind of things. In my 20s, I thought those who went to counseling were weak. I thought those who went to counseling were ones who are they got serious issues, God, I don't have those issues, right? I thought people went to counseling. I probably watched too much TV, they would lay on a sofa and tell my feelings. And that, right? And then I get into my early 30s and I hit a wall in life. Anyone ever hit a wall in life? I'm talking about not just walk into the wall, but you're driving pretty quick and boom, metaphorically speaking, of course, right? I mean, it's one of those where you hit a wall, and not only can you not knock down that wall, because that's what I always thought, well, you just got to fight harder, you got to work harder, you got to pray harder, you get spiritual too, you got to, right? And I hit the wall, and I couldn't get through the wall. And not only that, but some of you know what I'm talking about, I fell flat on my face after hitting the wall. Oh, and I knocked down some of the wall in the meantime, but I didn't even know how to take the bricks of the wall, and I didn't have the strength to pick them up, but if I did, to put them back together. And I had just a lot of life-changing happen, a lot of identity things I was trying to figure out. I remember seeking someone's advice, not a counselor, because that's like a sign of weakness, okay? But just someone who I trusted, and you know what their advice to me was? You need to go to professional counseling. I'm like, I don't like you. Like, next. But they were right. I knew they loved me. I knew they wanted the best for me, and they weren't making me feel bad about myself. They weren't chastising me. They weren't making me feel like a failure. They just said, you need to get some other perspective. You need someone to speak in. And they actually had someone, and I was in ministry at that time. I just started in ministry. And they're like, this guy only works with pastors and missionaries. And he understands the dynamics going on. And so I started meeting with him. And yeah, you sat on a couch, but I learned you didn't lay down. You don't have to lay down. I could have laid down, I suppose, but you just sit there. And I realized, and as he started asking me questions, and he started, because I got to share this, okay? My first session with him, I literally said within 5 minutes, how will I know when I'm better? That's a sign that you need counseling. Just FYI, okay? He was kind. He was very kind. He said, oh, we'll know. Like, AKA, like, this guy's apparently got layers upon layers. We're going to pull back, okay? And I realized it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I had blind spots in my life that, of course, I didn't know were blind spots. That's why they're blind spots. I needed someone to speak some truth into my life. I needed someone to ask me some questions that I had never thought of asking myself. Some of those questions I still have written down on a note card inside my Bible that I reference practically on a daily basis. Today, we're going to talk about what it means to be a wonderful counselor. Now, before we do that, though, I want to give you a little context for this passage that we're going to look at in a little bit in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Context is so important to understand the Bible, okay? And I like to help you understand the Bible because I think when you understand the Bible, it makes more sense. And when it makes more sense, you can apply it to your life. And so here's the context. It's the 8th century BC, or the 700s BC. And Isaiah's a prophet. He's someone that God would call out and say, your job is to speak on my behalf to the people. It was not a popular gig. And I want to even backtrack a little bit from there. There was a season when God was ruling the people, but they looked at all the other countries around them, and all the other countries had kings. And they said, we want a king. And God said, no, you don't. I'm your king. Oh, no. We want a king. They have a king. They have a king. They have a king. We want a king. No, you don't. I'm your king. And God's perfect gentleman, he didn't force them. He eventually said, okay, you want a king? I'll let you have a king. And so there was King Saul. King Saul started out good, then went sideways. And then you had David, second king of Israel. And then you had his son Solomon. And after the reign of Solomon, the kingdom that was one kingdom split into two kingdoms, and one was called Israel in the north, and one was called Judah in the south. There was 12 tribes, that's her 12 sons of Abraham, and there was 10 of those were in the northern kingdom called Israel, with Samaria as its capital, and the southern kingdom was 2 of those tribes with Jerusalem as its capital. And this is when you're reading like 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you're going to see all these names of kings, and they're going to say that he was the northern kingdom and he was the southern kingdom. This will help you make more sense. And the southern kingdom every so often would have a king that it would say would follow it after the Lord, guys like Hezekiah, every so often. But the northern kingdom, zilch. In fact, it would say this, it says it in your Bible too, that he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Like, not just made some bad decisions, he did evil in the sight of the Lord. King after king. And God kept warning him, He said, if you don't turn, there will be consequences. I will take you out of this land. Land was everything. Territory was everything. Still matters today, but it was everything back then. And God says, I will take you into exile. There will be consequences. There's always been consequences to sin. 700 BC, 2024, sin always has consequences. God is patient. He is kind. He is merciful, but he's also just. Can't separate that up from his character. And so it kept going again. And then God started raising up this nation called Assyria to the north of Israel. And they kept rising and kept getting more powerful and more powerful. And eventually what happened is they started to take siege of Israel, that northern kingdom. Started taking people into exile, started burning their houses down, started destroying their cities. And that's the time of Isaiah. And Isaiah writes this, you with me? You picture, this is so critical that you understand the context. This is not a good time. This is, people are dying, people are being taken into exile. The king of Assyria is absolutely dominating the king of Israel. And God says this to Isaiah to tell the people. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Let's check it out. It says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and what? Prince of Peace. Now, we're going to leave that up for a while. We read this. Some of us have maybe read this before, and we are like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's maybe a prophecy for who? Jesus, okay, right? All right. You're in this 722 BC, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe, okay? And your life has been turned upside down, and you're literally potentially going to die, okay? And the prophet from God, the Almighty God, like Jehovah, right, says, I have a solution to this problem. I have an incredible military solution to this problem. Here's the solution to the problem. I'm going to send a child. Y'all need more coffee, okay? All right. I'm going to send a child. This is ludicrous. Like, God's solution, actually, it's never changed, is not to send more power to defeat power, or more power to defeat power, or more kings to defeat other kings. His solution's always been to send Jesus. But this would have been so messed up in their head. And I think for many of us, some of us today, and those who you're inviting, we're still blinded by this, of thinking, how in the world is this child that we're going to talk about coming to earth and diving into this mess in a couple days the answer to my problems? You might not have the king of Assyria coming into your life, but we all have our struggles, don't we? We all have the things that aren't working out in life. We all have the regret. We all have the guilt. We all have the shame. God's solution in 700 BC and the solution in like 0182 AD and God's solution in December of 2024 is still the same. It's Jesus. Still that child that he sent from heaven to earth. Now, what is one of the words, and that's where we're going to focus on, two of the words actually, Wonderful Counselor. Now, the word wonderful in the original language actually translates into the word Pele. How many of you have ever heard that name before? Pele? You're not participatory. I got to get you going, okay? More coffee. Where's the coffee? Okay. Pele, right? Soccer guy, football, if you're really into it, okay? That's actually the word. Now, that's not a Brazilian word, but they consider Pele to be wonderful. Now, the word wonderful, when I say the word wonderful, I think, well, that was some wonderful pie. That was some wonderful... that was a wonderful lunch. I think about food like 98% of my life, okay, right? The word wonderful in the original language is not like wonderful pie or wonderful turkey or wonderful mashed potatoes. The word translates into supernatural, awe-inspiring, or miraculous. You can see why now the Brazilians called him Pele, right? Like, he wasn't just wonderful. He was awe-inspiring. It's like, this guy does things no one else could. So when Jesus is referred to, and this is one of the names of Jesus, wonderful, it's not, oh, he's just above average, or he's better than average, or he's like really good. It's supernatural. It's awe-inspiring. It's miraculous. Essentially, it is the supernatural colliding with the natural. Now, the word counselor is really best translated into what we would term as counselor. It's someone who had wisdom. It's someone who had knowledge. In fact, the counselor in that time of history would have been someone who would have given instructions to the military commanders. And you would want someone a counselor who's counseling the military leaders to have incredible strategy, incredible wisdom, incredible discernment, incredible knowledge. And so when you combine those words in the original with wonderful and counselor in the person of Jesus, we see that it's the totality of all the things. It is the totality, it is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of wisdom. Because the supernatural is colliding with the natural. It is the totality of knowledge. It is the totality of kindness. It is the totality of discernment. It is the totality of empathy. You with me? So I got thinking, I was like, well, we mentioned some other characteristics of counselors that we thought were important earlier. So I asked myself a couple questions. The first was, well, all right, we say that Jesus is all these things. How are his credentials? Anyone, would you go to a counselor who had no credentials? I would advise you not to, okay? Would you go to someone whose credentials were revoked? Probably not, okay. How are Jesus' credentials? Well, Bible tells us this in Hebrews 4:15. It says, we do not have a high priest, this is talking about Jesus, who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. That's an amen, right? Okay. But we have one who has been tempted in how many ways? Every way. You got the same translation I took out. Every way, just as we, yet, what? We're going to say this out loud, like, yet he did not sin. How are those credentials for you? Tempted in every way. I think sometimes we're like, well, Jesus is like fully God. No. Tells us that he gave up all his divine rights and he entered this world as a person. And he was tempted in every way. You mean he was tempted with greed? Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean he was tempted with pride? Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean he was tempted with lust? Mm-hmm, right? But yet he what? Did not sin. I would argue, and I think it's a decent argument, that those are impeccable credentials for a wonderful counselor. Well, how about this? How about, I would want a counselor who's full of compassion and someone who's a good listener, wouldn't you? Yes, you would, okay? So it says this in Psalm 56. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Some of you, that's all you needed to hear today. That was worth getting up this morning. He keeps tracks of all your sorrows. You have some sorrows today online. People watching us online, you have some sorrows today. You can share those in the comments if you feel comfortable. You've collected your tears. Again, these are rhetorical questions. Anyone ever shed some tears in life? Anyone ever be broken about a loss of someone you love, a health diagnosis, life not kind of turning out the way you thought? How's that for compassion that he's collected them? And he's recorded. It's, oh, well, suck it up, right? Here he comes again, whining about this and crying about this and all. Right? He is so compassionate. And Jesus is so incredible at listening to us. Aren't you glad? There has to be times that he has to be like, man, I would love to hit the mute button on this Mark guy. Like, he's always got something, right? But he doesn't. He's the perfect listener. I think that's why I told you. I think that was worth for some of you to join us today, because I think some of you have forgotten, or maybe ever never even knew, or maybe no one else is listening to you, that Jesus is the perfect listener. And all those things that have you in pain right now, because some of us, like, we talk, this is a really festive time of the year, an exciting time of the year. Of course it is, right? But some of you, this is an incredibly miserable time. You know, suicide rates are the highest over the holidays. And so I would implore you, if you're here today, I mean, it's happened at 2 of our 3 locations where someone joining us on a Sunday morning, this is no exaggeration, someone joining us on a Sunday morning, a couple days later took their life. It's happened in the last couple years at 2 of our locations. You have a wonderful counselor, if you're in that situation today, who's collecting your tears and he's remembering all the things He has not forgotten you. Well, what about wisdom? I would want someone who's got infinite wisdom, not just wisdom in a little area, but can take all the complexities of life and summarize them and then bring incredible wisdom to that. Well, Psalms tells us this too. He heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. Now, you're like, what's that? If he can bind up your wounds and heal your broken heart, that means his wisdom is so infinite that he can take all the nuances and all the variables that fit into your life and the life of this world, and he takes them all with infinite wisdom, again, and everything in between, and he can heal your wounds. Anyone need that today? Anyone need to go to the perfect counselor, the wonderful, the miraculous, the supernatural, the awe-inspiring counselor to get some wound? Bind it up. Now, I was reading through all these and I have a lot of other ones I won't share today, but some of you are like maybe thinking, well, Mark, that's great. Those are great verses, and I see how you made them fit and all that, and yeah, you seem like a decent guy. I'm not going to root for Penn State, but you still seem like a decent guy, but did Jesus actually ever do this? Or is this just lip service? Now, I asked the same question because I'm like, I don't want to just like spout. I asked myself, did Jesus ever do this with anyone? And immediately when I asked that question, and I don't have it on the screen, so I'll just tell you the story, but the John 21, the last chapter of John came to my mind. A guy by the name of Peter is one of Jesus' followers. Actually, not just one of his followers. It was like one of the tightest three friends he had, Peter, James, and John. They got to go places that the others one didn't. They got to see things the other didn't. There was such a bond. It was for Jesus himself and for them, and Jesus pouring into them. And Jesus said to Peter, hey, when I need you the most, because they're gonna execute me. They're gonna kill me. And you're gonna deny you even know me. And Peter like, if there's anyone who will stand up for you, Jesus, it's me. Like, these other guys, loser, right? But these guys, but I will. And then he's sitting in a courtyard as they're coming for Jesus, and they're going to take him to the sham trial, and they've already done it actually, and there's like people very low in the social rung at that time in the first century. And they start asking, one of them notices Peter and they said, hey, aren't you that guy following, like that Jesus guy? And nope, don't know the guy. And a second time, and a third time, then the rooster crows as Jesus prophesied. And it said that Peter he wept bitterly and he went away sad. Fast forward, Jesus dies. Jesus rises from the grave. Peter goes back to the family business because what are you going to do? Like, my leader's gone. He didn't know he rose from the grave. And he's back fishing. And one day Jesus shows up where Peter's fishing. And he does something that a wonderful counselor does. He doesn't just stand on the shore and like, once Peter sees me, he's going to come to me because he knows he failed me. He did something absolutely phenomenal. He invited Peter into relationship with him. He said, hey, Peter, I got like a fire going here. Let's cook some fish. Let's have some breakfast. He invited him in. You don't understand. I can't even put into words how bad Peter failed his best friend. Think of the betrayal. If you've ever had betrayal in your life by someone that you love or thought they loved you, maybe a spouse comes home and says, I don't love you anymore. Maybe there was an affair. I mean, think about the greatest betrayal you've ever experienced, and that's what Jesus experienced. And instead of berating Peter, instead of like, hey, Peter, let's do a little history lesson here. You remember like a little bit ago when like, no, none of that. None of that. He invited him in. High support, high invitation. But then he challenged him. He said, things are going to change. You're going to be the guy who I build this church thing on that's going to be the vehicle I use to fulfill the mission to see like Luke 4 happening, physical healing and all that stuff, right? You're going to be the guy. Wonderful counselor. Because then what happened? A few short time later, Peter's preaching a service, 3,000 people come to know Christ. We call it Pentecost, but there was, and he then led the church. Actually died for the person of Jesus. Wonderful counselor. Anyone need a wonderful counselor? Anyone need a perfect counselor? 4 weeks ago, I'm back sitting on the couch. Not like laying down, but I was sitting on the couch in front of the counselor. And I said, here's the deal. And I'm going to share, not everything I shared with him, but I said, I said, man, it feels like the last year and a half I've given everything I can to the Valley. Like, I love the Valley Church. I love all our locations. I love what God's doing. Love you guys. When people say, I don't know if I'm going to stay at this church, I'm like, it doesn't even make any sense to me. Okay? I'm like, this is amazing. Okay. And so working with our locations and making sure that we were getting feet to the vision, clarifying the vision values. And so a lot of time. I'm passionate. I'm super passionate about it. I'm making sure that the Valley Church is in a really good place, and that whatever God has in store for the future, that we're doing things now to position ourselves for that. And I spent, Jess and I, my wife and I, we adopted 2 kids about 6 years ago, and so we want to make sure that they have everything they need. And so we put a lot of time into getting the support system around them in their school, and the support system around them, and some other voices that can help with it, and as a parent should, right? So I'm not saying like doing what I do for the church is bad, and I'm definitely not saying what I focused on for the kids is bad by any stretch of imagination. That's what we do when we love our kids, right? We want to make sure that they have everything they can to be as whole as they possibly can. But as I'm sitting on this couch, I said to him, I said, hey, I feel like I've neglected myself. I feel like, and I'll even preface it, in my time with